Okay, and so now the meeting's recorded. So this is the monthly March 10th Westpointe Community Council meeting. It's the second Wednesday of the month. It's a year of COVID. It was a year ago this month that we had our last in-person meeting. We had the meeting, and when I got home that night, the basketball game had been canceled, and because of COVID and the world had changed. So we've been doing things online now for, I think this is about our fourth or fifth meeting. So with that, I think you have to hit that you want to be, you're consenting to recording, you have to hit the little button. And Kevin, for security reasons, we're not allowing people to freely enter and converse with you. So yeah, and that, but people can put in questions into the chat. And that. So with that, Kevin, take it away for the fire department.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Forbes, captain here at Medic Engine 11, Station 11 with Salt Lake City Fire Department. And you are one of the areas that we cover. Our district is like a rectangle running north and south from I-80 up to the county line. But the council districts actually run in a rectangle east-west. So we have two in ours that we cover, but Station 9 actually does the other one, the south one. And I forget what the name of that council is. But anyway, thanks for having me. And yeah, it's been a long time. I can tell you about a year ago when COVID really hit and they were telling people, don't go anywhere, don't call 911, don't go to the hospitals, don't this, don't that. Our calls really dropped. We had maybe a 2 or 3 month period there, but things have slowly gotten back to normal. And, nothing has really changed for us the way we do things other than, we just wear some extra PPE. So, we're in masks just like everybody. And I'd say, I believe the fire department right now is, the vaccine rate is somewhere in the 80s, I believe. I want to say 83 or 86%, something like that. But that being said, the chief still has us on a mask mandate. So until that changes, whether we are in your home or we are at the store or we're just stopping by to say hi, whatever it may be, even if we're outside and we're dealing with patients, we're still going to be in masks. Other than that, this is, I just like to kind of give what I call my time of the year reminders. The sun's starting to move. So if you're headed in one direction or the other, whether it be sunset or sunrise, just keep in mind that at some point that sun may be blinding you. So if you need to, kids are out and about, if it's, around the time when school's letting out or, there's a lot of heavy foot traffic, just kind of be mindful of that. Slow down if your vision gets impaired. Again, as a reminder for parents, or even if there's any kids on the meeting here, make sure to remind them about water safety. We've got the river running right through our area, our district, and it's cold. It's still cold, and it's going to continue to stay cold as that runoff melts. It's going to be just as cold, if not colder than it is now, and it's going to get deeper and it's going to pick up in speed. So they really need to watch themselves, around the rivers and the surplus canals and stuff like that in our area. Other than that, I would say I have a question for somebody on here. Since we haven't talked in a while, I know up at the north end of 2200 West, right where you get there around the county line, maybe a year or two ago, there was kind of some discussion about some pieces of property being for sale, and bunch of annexing that they wanted to go on and build a community up there. Does anybody have any updates on that? Is that progressing, or is that kind of stalled, or should we be expecting some development up that way?
I spoke with Sherry Llewellyn at the city. I think Sherry may be here on this call. Allison, can you unmute Sherry? I know, I think she's using a different last name.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
And she can
Sure.
give you an update about what's going on with that.
Yeah, I don't mean to take up too much time, but I just
So one of the,
That's okay. Sherry's unmuted now.
Okay, so there's not a lot to report. We are still waiting for the plant or the study from Lewis Young, who is doing the impact analysis of the potential of changing our annexation policy plan. I'm supposed to get it by the end of this week, but I was also supposed to get it a couple of weeks ago too. So I'm just waiting for that draft, and then we'll start the public process with the Planning Commission to review that plan, and they'll make a recommendation to the City Council whether or not to even change our annexation area that we would be interested in annexing. And then if the council changes that and adopts it, then the annexation would proceed forward through that public process.
okay. So it's still kind of slowly moving along.
So yeah, slowly.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, unless somebody has a specific question for me or for the fire department.
Thank you so much, Captain. Right, Captain? Right?
Yes.
Captain
Yes.
Forbes, appreciate that.
It's Kevin. You can just call
Captain.
me.
Does your wife call you Captain?
Sometimes, but I have to call her chief.
Oh, smart woman. Detective Oliver? I can see that you're there. So let's hear from you.
All
Sorry
right. I think
sorry
I'm
about that.
unmuted.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. Thank you. I know we're not asking for questions, and that's usually what I do at the first. So if there's any questions that come through the chat, I will try and answer them as they come through. Dorothy, do you have any questions, concerns right now?
I don't. I'm fine.
All right. I'd like to go through just real brief. We have two different sets of bike officers that are out and about on the west side. We have a parks bike squad that hits all the parks in the city. So they're kind of an east-west squad. And last Friday, he's starting to send me some reports. Last Friday, they spent some time at the Westpointe Park. They also spent some time at Madsen, Jordan River, and the 9-Line Bike Park. So they are out and about. If there's a request of where you would like to see them in one of your parks, please get that to me, and I can forward that to them. The other bike squad that's available and is actually working really hard is our West Side Bike Squad, and they are assigned specifically to Districts 1 and Districts 2. Just do a couple of summaries, read through a couple of summaries of last week. He sends me a weekly update. They had firearm and drug distribution arrest off of District 2, and that's where they've been this week. They had a health department cleanup that was just on 400 West. They assisted in a parole fugitive and in arresting him on North Temple. They had another warrant on 900 West that they were able to book in that was out of actually Nevada. So they were able to find a felony warrant out of Nevada that they were able to take to jail. They had a occupied stolen up on 1700 North that they were able to track and to arrest an individual. They had another health department cleanup on Cornell that they assisted with. Let's see, on the 4th, which is just 6 days ago, they had a parole fugitive that they were able to find and arrest on North Temple. And it goes on and on. And I just want to report. So as of this last week, they had 8 felony arrests. They had 2 occupied stolens that they were able to recover. So year to date, they've had 68 felony arrests on the west side. They've taken 7 firearms off the street and had 7 occupied stolens that they've also recovered. So the West Side Bike Squad is very proactive, and it's good to see them out and about in the community. Are there any questions or concerns about that, or any parks that you'd like to see them at, other than the Jordan River Park, because that's where they work on? If not, I'll just give you a couple more numbers. In the last 7 days, the concern that we have in District 1 continues to be motor vehicle thefts. We're 104.6% higher than we should be. For a year to date, our motor vehicle thefts are actually up 71.4%. So it's starting to flatten a little bit, but we're still really concerned about those motor vehicle thefts. And of course, the number one thing right now that we're really concerned about year to date is our car prowls. We have 224% increase in the year to date in our car prowls, and that's just in District 1. So that continues to be a concern. If you see someone that's peeking in car doors or car windows, please contact us, because that's something we've got to get a hold of. You guys know your communities. Like I like to say, you know your communities, who's supposed to be on the streets and who shouldn't be on the streets, or who's someone that doesn't look familiar. Please give us a call. Those are the numbers I have. The good news is we just graduated a police academy class. They should be in our field training program here in the next little bit. And we started another class of, I believe, 18 officers. So in about 21 weeks, that class will also be out, and we can add those to the patrol officers that are already in the field. So that's a pretty good update. Any questions, Dorothy? Anything that you'd like me to look at right now?
Have you gone to lunch?
Trying to get Curdy to commit to a time with him on patrol has been very difficult, but we have not forgotten. I will try and get him either on patrol, or maybe I can meet up with him after his patrol shift is over, and we will get over there.
So for people who are new, in February, we recognized the public servants that come to our meetings, and recognized Detective Curdy for his 5 years of service to the Westpointe community, and the owner of Lofty's Bar and Grill. We met with him, and he is planning on having lunch with both detectives over at the Lofty's Bar and Grill. I think Alan's going to come and try to meet with you when you get there, and we hope you enjoy yourselves.
And we appreciate that. Thank you.
So with that, let's go to Josh Robolo. I didn't see Josh. Is he here?
He
He is here. Josh, yes.
Hey, thanks. Good evening, everyone. My name's Josh Boyle. I'm from the Mayor's Office, Community Liaison. And I'm just going to post the links in the chat for the few things that I just wanted to share, along with my contact information for anyone that wants to reach out to me in the Mayor's Office and talk to someone in the Mayor's Office. I'm always happy to take calls or send me an email. So first of all, our city has a lot of different boards and commissions that deal in a lot of different areas of policy, from planning to the library to arts to historic landmarks. And a lot of these boards often have vacancies very frequently throughout the year, depending on the board. And so if you haven't already and interested in being involved in one of them, take a look at those and look at what might interest you and see what vacancies are current, or if you notice that there are some that might be coming up in later this year, and apply to those. And if you have applied to a board and commission and are waiting for response on that, for each board, there's a contact info, usually a contact of one person within the department associated with that board. So just reach out to whoever's the contact for that, and to get some more information. And all these boards members are appointed, almost all of them are appointed by the mayor, with the exception, I think, of one of them was the mosquito abatement district, which is relevant for tonight's meeting. Those are appointed by the council, not the mayor's office. So that's one thing. If also the Racial Equity and Policing Commission put out a year-end report for 2020 on progress made for their board, and decisions and policies, adjustments made from the side of the council and from the mayor's office over the past year, and that's available to review. Also, just sharing some information just from the county for Women's History Month, which is this month, and we had International Women's Day earlier this week. There are a number of different events put on by the county, virtual panels and symposiums for that. And so take a look at those if you're interested in participating in that. And I think that's all I had. I don't have very much. And then just a reminder, as always, to take advantage of the SLC mobile app to report issues in your neighborhood. It could be issues with encampments, could be issues with street lights, street signs, a wide variety of things that you might see in your neighborhood that needs city attention. Please report those in that app, and then helps the city gather information about where we're receiving requests for service, and what needs need to be addressed throughout different areas of the city. And so that can be downloaded on your smartphone. And if you don't use a smartphone, if you use internet, which if you're on this meeting, you do, slc.gov, and just click on request or report. And that's the same thing there. You can put in a request, or request for information or service. And yes, so yeah, thanks, Dorothy. And in the chat, just reminded me about, so the mayor is actually in the process of visiting the various community councils in the city. And the plan for now is that next month's meeting, that the mayor will be part of the agenda to visit and spend some time, not the entire meeting, but at least half an hour or so with the community to talk about things going on in the city, and to answer questions from the community. So take a look for that, out for that. That should be on the next month's agenda. And I will get with you, Dorothy, to confirm that, but I am pretty certain that that will be taking place next month. So that's all I have. And is there any questions?
Josh, thank you so very much. You've been very helpful. And do you see anything else? Okay. I didn't see Councilman Rogers on the call. Is that correct? Did anybody see him?
I do not see him on the call.
Okay. And I
Councilman
don't-
Rogers, if you're here, let me know in the chat.
Oh, perhaps he has an alias, right? Is that, who knew?
Maybe.
And I think I didn't see either Senator Escamilla or Representative Holland. I actually didn't really expect them, since the session has just ended. We'll ask them to give an update. One quick thing is that Senate Bill 439 was sent out. There was a notice sent out. A number of people in the community sent me back notices saying that they were concerned about the bill, and they were going to contact the governor's office on it. This particular Senate bill appropriates about $70 million that can be spent by the Inland Port Authority and then they've set up a separate committee to handle this. That'll be another group of people to distribute this money to developers. And there's a lot of concern about the fact that this committee that will be allocating this money are unelected people, and that the meetings will be difficult to access, and the conflict of interest provisions have been loosened. So
Dorothy,
if you're,
sorry, is that Senate bill, you said 439, but is it 439 or 243? I think it's Senate.
243, you're right.
Okay, I'm gonna put a link to our website with the letter to sign if you're interested in doing that in the chat.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, I really appreciate that. I know that there was a meeting of people today with the governor's office to talk about it. So, and they're counting who's calling in and they're concerned. So, if you're, it's certainly something that affects us. So, with that, let's go on to our main presentation. Ari,
I'm here.
there, and then, Ari, tell me how you say your last name.
Faraji.
Faraji. Ah, great, Dad. So, I think at this point we wanted to change the security settings.
I did that. Let me know if you guys can see this.
Yes, we can see it. And then we are also gonna allow everyone to go ahead and turn your cameras on, and you'll have a little bit more access to your camera, mic, and chat. So you'll see that come through. And then if you have questions, you can type them into the chat for Ari, or you can raise your hand to unmute yourself. So to do that, remember, you'll just choose the reactions from the control panel at the bottom of the screen and raise your hand. If you are maybe on an older version of Zoom and haven't updated it yet, excuse me, you might find the raise your hand feature in the participants view, which you can also access from the control panel.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Allison. And just as a reminder, I'm in presentation mode, so I cannot see the chat. So if there are any questions, I would appreciate a little moderation, either from yourself or from Dorothy.
Can do.
And at this point, I think you've planned a presentation for about 20 minutes. Is that correct, Ari?
Correct. And then I'm going to leave about 10 minutes for some questions and answers.
Okay, and then we'll look for those questions and answers in the chat, or as Allison explained, by raising hands.
Sure. And you guys can always reach out to us directly. I'll give a website address at the end, and you can always Google Salt Lake City Mosquito Abatement District, and you'll find our contact information on there.
Great, take it away.
All right, perfect. So without further ado, thank you for the invitation, Dorothy. I really appreciate all the work that you've done, especially in the last couple of weeks, by trying to increase our interaction and inviting me to come in and speak to your community council and the residents as well. So I'm starting my presentation with this photo, a historic photo of Salt Lake City residents out for a leisurely stroll near the Great Salt Lake. And as you can tell, they are covered from head to toe because the mosquito abundance was so bad in the valley back in the day. We were actually created in 1923, and we were fully operational in 1924. So we've been doing mosquito abatement district for the residents of Salt Lake City for almost 100 years now. And as part of that, we adhere to what's called a One Health concept. This is a concept that recognizes that our health, human health, is directly associated with animal health and also the environment. And to be quite honest with you, I can't think of another profession that really encompasses this One Health approach better than what we do within mosquito surveillance and control. Every aspect of our operations really falls nicely under this great umbrella. Everything from environmental health, ecology, veterinary medicine, public health, human medicine, molecular biology, health economics, virology, everything that we deal with has aspects of One Health in it. And we are trained professionals. I'm a PhD entomologist. My assistant director is a PhD microbiologist. Most of our staff are proficient at what they do, and we always continue our education and training on an annual basis to ensure that we're learning more and more about what we do and how we go about doing it. This is a map of our district. I think most of you are familiar with this, so I won't go into too much detail. We cover about 110 square miles within Salt Lake City, but a large portion of what we deal with up in the Northwest actually falls within unincorporated county lands. But nonetheless, we do provide services there because the mosquitoes that are produced in that habitat end up dispersing into the city where our human populations are. So if you look at the 215 and 15 corridor, that really divides our district into two zones. One is the urban and suburban zone, and the other is the rural zone. And unfortunately, we do have a tremendous abundance of mosquitoes in our neck of the woods because all the snow melt essentially tries to make its way towards the Great Salt Lake, but it never quite makes it there because it's all impounded in these series of wetland habitats. And the cycle of flooding and drying down is really what produces a lot of the mosquitoes. Now, what we do falls under what's called integrated mosquito management. And if I divide this up into different aspects of our operations, about a third of our time is spent doing surveillance, a third is spent doing actual control, and a third is spent doing public education, training and operations, and a lot of research. And we really pride ourselves in not only conducting the research, but more importantly, publishing that research in peer-reviewed, accredited scientific journals. Now, if I divide our actual surveillance and control, you'll see that there's quite a bit of variation between the two. Within our surveillance program, we do a lot of what's called larval or juvenile surveillance in aquatic habitats. And we also spend a lot of time doing adult surveillance. This is adult mosquitoes, capturing adult flying mosquitoes in a variety of different traps, counting them, speciating them, and also testing them for pathogens. But if you look at our control operations, about 95% of our time is spent doing larval control. This is called larviciding. And only about 5% of our operations is spent doing adulticiding or adult mosquito control. And unfortunately, this is the one aspect of our operation that's really in the public eye. And a lot of people associate our operations with conducting these adulticide applications. And yes, we do them, but we only do them when they are absolutely necessary and as a last resort. And when you look at the overall operations, they really only encompass a small proportion of what we do on a day-to-day or seasonal basis. Now, within IMM, it is extremely important to realize that we really use science to drive every aspect of what we do. We take a comprehensive approach to make sure that we understand the biology and the ecology of the pests that we're dealing with, and we use our resources as efficiently as we can, not only from a fiduciary perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. We want to have as minimal of an environmental footprint as we possibly can. I'm an entomologist. I got into this game because I love insects. My first insect collection was at 5 years of age. I grew up in a small town called Laverne in Southern California, where we didn't have an entomology program in the university that I attended. So I actually created one, and I got my professors to teach me about entomology. And then I moved to New Jersey and spent about 15 years working on my master's and then my PhD, again, studying insects. So I am extremely passionate about the bugs that we're working with and also the environment as a whole. And I want you guys to be aware of that. Now, when we talk about surveillance, our surveillance can really be divided up into larval surveillance. These are the juvenile mosquitoes, adult surveillance, and then also there is a pathogen or disease surveillance component to our operations as well. For our adult surveillance, we use a variety of different traps. These are carbon dioxide baited traps that we actually create ourselves using 3D printers in-house. But we also use resting traps and also oviposition or gravid traps. So all in all, when you look at our district, we utilize about 37 strategically placed carbon dioxide traps and about 18 of these gravid traps. This is over 55 traps that are set up twice a week, every single week during the active mosquito season. It takes about 7 to 10 people to set these traps, collect these traps, sort them, and also test them for pathogens. And as far as the pathogens, we actually do that in-house. We have biological safety level 2 laboratories with full PCR testing capabilities, and we test routinely for the presence of West Nile virus, St. Louis encephalitis, and Western equine encephalitis. And this testing allows us to develop minimum field infection rates, which helps us determine thresholds and where the greatest disease risk may be to our human populations. So if we see a sudden increase in mosquito populations in certain locations or a sudden increase in infection rates, we know that we have to increase our control measures so that way we suppress and mitigate those mosquito populations so nobody within our jurisdiction ends up getting sick because of these mosquito-borne viruses. And every trap is graphed on a daily basis as they are processed. And this is just a typical trap during the course of the season. This is just from our carbon dioxide beta traps. So as you can tell from this just bar graph, there's a tremendous amount of mosquitoes out there. In this particular snapshot at the beginning of August, our high was about 10,000 mosquitoes. And it's not uncommon for us to find about 20,000 mosquitoes in just a single trap within our locations. So those are a lot of mosquitoes that are looking for people and animals to feed on. And our mission is really to try to suppress those populations so that way we are enhancing your quality of life so you can enjoy the outdoors and also your own backyards. In addition to that, we also try to protect your public health by, again, suppressing these potentially disease-carrying mosquitoes. Now, we've also incorporated a nice GPS system from California called the CalServe, and we converted it into a system for us in Utah. And this is for the entire state. We have about a dozen of our other mosquito abatement districts on board, and we've also made this available to the public health department as well. And this really allows us to graph different zones within our jurisdiction. It allows us to look at our pesticide usage, mosquito abundance, species composition, and also infection rates. So from this system, we can quickly develop these nice pie charts that lets myself and my inspectors know where the mosquitoes are, how many of them are present, and more importantly, what species they are, because we deal with about 26 routine mosquito species within our jurisdiction. And not all of them are disease-carrying or public health important mosquitoes. In fact, there's only about a handful of them that are important to us. So in this particular snapshot, you can tell that the largest pie has about 9,700 mosquitoes in it. And the red color designates a particular species called Culex tarsalis, which is a mammal-biting mosquito. It loves to feed on us. And it's also one of the most efficient vectors of West Nile virus. So if I see a lot of red on this graph, that tells me that we better do something about this to ensure that they are not transmitting any pathogens to our residents. Now, on the other hand, if we see a lot of blue, this designates another species for us. This is the floodwater mosquito called Aedes dorsalis. And it does occur in tremendous numbers, but the good news about this mosquito is that it is really only a nuisance or a pestiferous mosquito. It's not a very efficient vector of arthropod-borne viruses or mosquito-borne viruses. So as a result of that, when I see a chart like this, we make very informed operational decisions about maybe we don't want to spray in this case because these mosquitoes aren't as much of a public health importance to us. Now, as far as our control, we do a lot of larval control. Remember that 95% of our time is spent doing that larval control, and about 5% is spent doing adult control. Now, when it comes to larval control, if we can take basic mechanical measures where we're draining habitats, where we're clearing ditches to ensure that water is flowing, or even something as simple as removing containers that may hold water, we go ahead and do that. And we don't have any need for pesticide applications if we are utilizing this method. We also have a very healthy biological control program where we rear these tiny mosquito fish at our own in-house fish hatchery, and we place them in residential backyards, in ornamental ponds and abandoned swimming pools. So that way these fish are naturally reducing the mosquito populations. And that way I don't have to send an inspector out on a weekly basis to make a pesticide application in those habitats. So we're very proud of this component of our operations. And as far as our larval control measures, we use primarily biopesticides or microbial agents. These are mostly bacteria and fungi that we utilize in aquatic habitats. And our primary product is actually a bacteria called BTI, or Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis. This is a very target-specific bacteria for mosquitoes that allows us to, again, reduce our environmental footprint out there and reduce our non-target effects on other insect species. We apply these products either by hand, by backpack, by ATVs, or potentially tracked vehicles if the habitat is too big for us. In addition to that, every catch basin within the city is treated. Every curbside gutter is treated by a team of bicycle riders. These bikers put in about 30 miles a day during the course of the season, and they can cover the entire city in about 30 days. And as soon as they're done, they restart again and try to get as much of that habitat covered as possible, because the primary vector of West Nile virus, Culex pipiens, is found in these habitats. In addition to that, we also have a tree hole program. So every tree hole cavity in the city is mapped. It has a small little spray paint on it. And we go routinely to every single one of these tree holes on an annual basis and inspect them and treat them as needed, because a particular mosquito that is found in that habitat is called Aedes syriensis, the western treehole mosquito. And that is the primary vector of dog heartworm in our area, in addition to being a nuisance mammal biter. So we ensure that we suppress those populations on an annual basis as well. Now, I told you about the hand applications, the ATV applications, and the tracked vehicles. But if the habitat is too big for us, we also have airplanes that we utilize for these larval microbial applications. And these are generally in habitats that are 20 acres or larger in size. Now, I do want to talk about our adult control measures. We conduct this through what's called ultra low volume, or ULV. These are conducted either by truck-mounted applications or by aerial applications using airplanes. When we conduct these applications, the rates that we use are extremely small. This is why they are called ultra low volume. In addition to having very, very small droplet sizes, we use very low or ultra low amounts. Within mosquito control, the rates are typically between 0.5 to 1.5 ounces per acre, versus agriculture or forestry, where the rates are much higher than what we actually use. The rate that we utilize is about 0.75 ounces to the acre, and I'll come back to that. So if you think about that 0.75 ounces, think about it as being essentially 1 ounce in a shot glass. And what we do is we take this material and put it over an entire football field. A football field is about the size of an acre. So imagine that small amount of volume being dispersed throughout this acre or football field. And this is how we do that. We create extremely small droplets. This is what you're looking at is a typical human hair that is about 50 microns or micrometers in width. The droplets that we create are about 7 to 22 microns or micrometers in size. Our average droplet is about 15 micrometers. And this is extremely important when it comes to adult mosquito control activities. And the way that we do that is, imagine a golf ball that's being reduced into a smaller marble and then further reduced into a smaller BB. So that one golf ball can eventually be 22 marbles or about 1,000 BBs. And that's the same concept that we use by putting this product through this high pressure system. So with that 0.75 ounces, we can create about 10 million of these 20 micrometer sized droplets. And that's just in a single BB. So this is an extremely important concept to realize when it comes to these applications. And the intent of these applications is to create droplets that are big enough to be able to get down from the airplane, but small enough to stay aloft to make contact with adult flying mosquitoes. That single droplet, if it makes contact with an adult flying mosquito, can cause a toxic effect in that mosquito. But the good news is it will not have the same toxic effect on a larger insect that may be out there. But in order to further reduce our impact, we do three major things that are very important. I already told you about the ultra low volume, the 0.75 ounces per acre. And I already told you about the small droplet sizes that we create. And the other important component for you to realize is the timing of our application. All of our applications, adult applications, are conducted after sunset. We ensure that the pollinators are resting and they're in their hives, and we have minimal impact on our non-target organisms that may be out there. But nonetheless, when we do conduct these applications, we're using these Piper Aztecs that fly about 150 miles an hour. The droplets that we create are about 34 micrometers in size from the airplane, but by the time they get down to the ground level, they're about 15 microns in size. I told you about the rate, and every once in a while, we actually put a fluorescent dye tracer within the product and collect those droplets on the ground using spinners to ensure that they are indeed getting into our target habitats and that they're in the right density and the appropriate size. And our release height is typically about 100 feet, but it ranges between 100 to 300 feet, depending on whether or not there are birds present or other potential obstacles such as power lines. Every time we conduct these applications, we do pre-trapping. So our traps lets us know how many mosquitoes there are and where these mosquitoes are. So this is the number of traps down at the bottom, and the Y or the left scale tells you how many mosquitoes were present. And this is a snapshot from August, which is our busiest month during the course of the season. The arrows indicate where an aerial adult application was conducted. So generally these traps go out on a Monday. We collect them on Tuesday. As soon as we get the numbers, we make a determination on whether or not we need to make an application. And then we go back out and we trap again. So our post-trapping is generally conducted about a day or two after the initial trapping or application. And ideally, we'd like to see a reduction in our mosquito populations following these applications. In addition to all the surveillance that we do, our aerial contractors that provide the service to us give us Excel spreadsheets and also these maps that lets us know where they were, what they did, what the environmental conditions were like, what product they use, how much of it they use. So we have this data for every single one of our applications. So I'm going to show you some of these graphs from the month of August so you get an idea of where these applications are actually occurring. So this was conducted on August 4th. This other one was conducted on August 8th, and hopefully you're starting to see a pattern that these are mostly occurring in the northwest quadrant, sort of west and sometimes north of the airport. And the last application in August was conducted on August 27th. So even though August is our busiest month, we only conducted 4 of these mosquito management applications. Now, I do want to talk about pesticide registration so you guys understand the products that we use, why we use them, and how we use them. Every single pesticide that we utilize within our program is regulated through the Environmental Protection Agency through what's called the fungicide, the Federal Insecticide Fungicide Rodenticide Act. Every single one of these pesticides go through years, sometimes 8 to 20 years of evaluations for toxicology, for drift, for wildlife impact, for aquatic impact, and they are always spending millions and millions of dollars to ensure that what they're using out there is safe prior to any label or registration process is completed through the EPA. In addition to that, we're also regulated through what's called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System under the Clean Water Act. So this is a secondary regulatory process for us to abide by. And then we in-house are further regulated through the Utah Pollutant Discharge Elimination System under the Utah Department of Agriculture. We apply for a permit every 5 years, and they ensure that the products that we're using are safe as they are intended to be used. And in fact, all pesticides, regardless of these additional steps that I told you about, have to go through a re-registration process every 15 years under the Food Quality Protection Act. And this is to ensure that the EPA is using the latest science and the latest evaluations to determine whether or not these products are safe for us to use in the field. So when EPA conducts their evaluations, they ensure that when these pesticides are used according to these label directions, that they will not harm people, wildlife, or the environment. And the labels that they produce at the end of the day are considered federal law, and we abide by them strictly. And in fact, a lot of the times, actually almost 100% of the time, our district utilizes mid-application rates, not even the maximum application rates. So we even further reduce our risk by only applying at these mid-label rates. Now, I do want to talk about the fact that all chemicals are toxic, but what is important is the dose at which they are toxic. So whoever is talking to you guys about the toxicity of whatever product, including myself, if they don't tell you about the rate, if they don't talk about application rates or amounts that are being used under direction, then you should investigate that yourself and try to figure out what the real story is. I do want to give you this example of warfarin. This was developed as rat poison in 1948. It's a very commonly used rodenticide. It's used to kill rats and mice. And at lower doses, it has been shown to not only be safe in people, but actually beneficial to those with blood clotting issues. This is a blood thinner that is prescribed. And in 2018, it was prescribed to over 14.7 million people in the US. It's the 52nd most prescribed drug. And it has the same active ingredient as rat poison, and yet it has life-saving medication properties. Now, many of you guys have seen charts like this as well, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but toxicity is always in the dose. And even common things such as aspirin and Advil and salt and sugar can have toxic effects. So again, it is extremely important to figure out where those levels are. The two products that we use within our arsenal for adult mosquito control are Dibrome and Biomist. And I put their LD50 values on here just for you to know. And I hope this presentation can be made available to everyone after this, Dorothy, and anybody is more than welcome to reach out to me as well. Now, briefly, I want to talk about permethrin risk assessment. This was actually conducted by a professor out of Montana State University. The red circle that you see is the no effect level. This is essentially from a ground applied, a truck mounted application that's driving down your street, which, by the way, we rarely do any of those applications within the city, regardless of the location. So these studies were done in a location where these trucks were actually going down these residential neighborhoods. The yellow is the no effect. The green is the EPA acceptable daily exposure from these ground applied ultra low volume mosquito adulticide applications. And then if you look in that circle, you probably shouldn't be able to see the dot. I can barely see it on my screen. This is the actual estimated exposure from a truck mounted application. This is 3/10,000th of the EPA threshold, or 3/1,000,000th of the actual no effect level. Now, I mentioned permethrin on the previous slide that I showed you the LD50s. This is the same ingredient that is recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics for lice control. Now, again, toxicity is in the dose, but I wanted to give you an example of this so we understand this. The product that we use for adult mosquito control from our truck mounted applications is called Biomist 3030. The active ingredient in that product is called permethrin. The same product is available to you over the counter for lice control. Permethrin is the same active ingredient. The rate that we use is 0.0034 pounds to the acre. The rate that you're applying to your child's head is about 138 pounds to the acre. This is magnitudes of order different. So just to kind of put this in perspective, and I'd love to talk to you guys about this down the line as well. One other thing that I wanted to show you guys as far as pesticides is that every few years we do a pesticide analysis, a urine analysis from our own employees, including myself. And this was done last in August of 2016. The Department of Health came in and collected urine samples from us, and we are the applicators. We are the ones that are dealing with these pesticides on a daily basis. We're the ones that are mixing them. We're the ones that are calibrating our equipment. And oftentimes we're actually in the field when these applications are being conducted because we're collecting the droplets and we're collecting the traps. And yet, nonetheless, during the peak of our season, the Department of Health found out that even our highest 95% percentile was in the lower 5% when you look at the national average. So the pesticide exposure of us, the applicators, was extremely, extremely low. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about our environmental assessment and our proposed project with the US Air Force. The Air Force requested that we develop an environmental assessment and share it with different entities that had jurisdiction within our area. And so we sent this to the Utah Department of Environmental Quality in the Division of Water Quality. We sent it to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services in the Utah Geological Services field. And we also sent it to the Utah Department of Health in the Environmental Epidemiology program. We got minor comments back from all these 3 different divisions. We incorporated them into the actual environmental assessment that we then published. That's available on our website. The website address is provided for you here, and it's also available on the public notice website as well. Because of the interest from the public, our board and our staff decided to extend the comment period on this environmental assessment. So this is currently being extended to the end of March. We welcome your feedback. We welcome your questions and concerns. We value your opinions. My email is at the bottom. Dorothy, again, please share this presentation with everybody so that way if there are any concerns or questions, I can address them directly. Within that environmental assessment, the proposed area where we're going to do this work is in the same areas that I showed you where our already existing adult mosquito management control procedures are being conducted. The intent of this proposal is not to increase our pesticide applications. The intent is not to increase the frequency of these applications. We're not intending to switch the products that we are using. The only thing that we are trying to do with this partnership is to develop a relationship with the Air Force. And instead of using our paid contract, we will have the Air Force do this for us for only 1, maybe 2 applications. And it's really a cost saving for us and you guys as residents and constituents of us at the end of the day. These adulticide applications are expensive. A 15,000 acre application costs about $30,000 to us. So we can provide the pesticide and the Air Force can provide the aircraft and personnel where we can conduct surveillance, we can conduct the applications, we can gauge the efficacy of these operations. The Air Force has a keen interest in doing this because they are the ones that respond to natural disasters on a global basis. They do this nationally and also internationally. So think about Hurricane Katrina or the flooding that Texas experienced last year. Following these catastrophic events, the spray unit from the Air Force is dispensed to those areas to help mitigate mosquito-borne disease risk. And in order to do that, they need proficiency training. So this is really a win-win for both of us where we help provide that training for them. And at the same time, they help reduce the potential costs associated with some applications. Yes,
Ari, I'm afraid that we're not, I wanted to go to the questions because I'm getting real concerned.
Sure.
We have a number of them in the,
I'm going to end on this note here. This is my last slide. You have my address. I also encourage you guys to check the EPA website. There is specific information on NAILID, the mosquito management product that we are proposing to use. So please do your research and look into this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Allison, do you want to start with the questions in the chat?
Yeah, we can. Sorry, the screen just changed a little bit. And Ari, I'm sure
have people ask the question, or how are you going to do it?
I think I'm going to go through the ones in the chat right now. If anyone has anything to add, they can. And Ari, you can probably see some of these in the chat right now.
I can now. Yeah, I think it'd be easier if you just direct. I'm not going to go through the whole list. Maybe you can send me them and I can reach out to them individually.
No, because people came to hear you and really would need to hear the answers.
I
so
think
they're all aware of the questions.
I think there are some trends that maybe we can consolidate some. And so I apologize, everyone, if we're not able to get to every single one of your questions. But I think there are a lot of questions on the impact of, I actually live on 2200 West. And so as a resident of 2200 West, I think I'm seeing a lot of comments from folks in that area on, I know there's some folks in this area who have beehives, who are worried about the impact that's going to have on the beehives, as well as some other wildlife and/or animals that are in the area. And then there's just quite a few comments about, I'm probably going to say it wrong, NAILID specifically, and studies that have been conducted showing that it is maybe more toxic than what is being shared. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that, and then we can kind of continue as you share.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, as far as non-target impacts on our pollinators, our applications are only conducted after sunset when the bees are back in their hives. In addition to that, our website also has a no spray request, and residents are more than welcome to fill those out, and we generally honor those. We haven't had any instances where we have not made an application to a resident that has filled one of those out. Now, the public health laws do provide us a certain leeway in certain emergency situations to conduct those applications, but nonetheless, we do honor every single one of those no spray requests that have come in. The fact that we're spraying at night, the fact that we are creating these small droplets, the fact that we are creating very, very small amounts of pesticides that are intended to stay aloft and make contact with these adult flying mosquitoes really mitigates a lot of the non-target effects on our pollinators. The other question that I see on here is from Lionel Trepanier. I am struck by the apparent incongruency of Dr. Faraji saying aerial mosquito management applications are never conducted based on a schedule or recurring cycle. That is 100% true. Every single application that we do is based on a need in order to conduct that. There is no schedule. We do not just go out and say it's Tuesday night and we need to make an application. We justify every single one of these applications based on the abundance of mosquitoes, based on the species composition of the mosquitoes, and based on the infection rates of the mosquitoes. The fact that we are trying to work with the Air Force ahead of time does not mean that they will necessarily spray during the duration that they're here with us. They're planning on deploying for 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, if there is no need to make an adult application, that will not be conducted. So yeah, absolutely. We do not do anything unless there is an actual scientific justification for it.
Thanks, Ari. There's also a question in here about midges and, oh my gosh, brine flies as incidental targets of the mosquito control from the environmental assessment. And as development increases the inland port, how will our ecosystems and bird populations be protected? So can you speak a little bit more to that? I know we threw the inland port into there, but we're just seeing a lot of impact to wildlife in the area, the ecosystem in the area. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, I can talk about the things that I'm knowledgeable about. The inland port, I'm really not going to touch that one because I think that's a bigger issue than any of us on this call can solve right now.
Of course.
As far as our non-target effects on other organisms out there, including midges, we actually did a very intensive study about a year ago. We put a series of traps in our field application sites, both in control and treatment sites, and we collected every single insect that we could possibly get our hands on. And we have this data and we're just on the verge of publishing this. We did impact the midge populations because midges are very similar to mosquitoes. They're a smaller flying insect about the same size, and they're actually related to mosquitoes as well. So that was the only group of insects where we saw a decline in. But fortunately, as soon as the application ceased, the populations of those insects rebounded. As far as the other insects, including dragonflies, odonates, or hemipterans, other true bugs that were out there, believe it or not, we actually saw an increase in their populations regardless of treatment effect. And we're sending this publication in to one of the higher journals in ecology, and we hope to be able to share that with you in the future. At the end of my presentation, I actually had a series of slides to show you some of that data. But in the interest of time, I will not do that, but it is included in the presentation. If anybody wants a copy of it, we'd be more than happy to share them with you.
Great. I know folks are here to hear you talk, and we also have another presentation. So I think what I maybe wrapping up with a final question here, and then what we can do, if this is okay with you, Ari, is we'll collect the questions from the chat and send those to you. I don't know if it'll be helpful. I don't know if there's information you would be able to send to us, but there's a couple questions in here about, I believe it's NALED specifically, and that it's restricted from use in the EU, and just kind of questions about, and other research that's been done from University of California. And I think there were some questions in here about just why we haven't been able to find a less toxic or a better alternative. You know, EPA says it's okay, but the EU isn't using it. And so if you could speak to that a bit.
Yeah, you know, I wish I didn't have to use any chemical insecticides, to be quite honest with you. But I do have a public health mission. I do have a quality of life mission. And for many of you that live on the West Side, I think you can attest to the mosquito abundance and the nuisance that they cause. So what we tried to do is we tried to mitigate and suppress those populations as best as we can. And Allison, we rely on the EPA to help guide and direct us. I mentioned the registration process, and I feel very confident based on the toxicological assessments, based on the biological assessments that they have conducted on these products, that when they are used according to these label rates, that they are indeed safe for the environment, people, and wildlife. But again, I highly encourage you guys at the end of my presentation, I gave a link directly to the EPA website, and they are the world's authority when it comes to environmental issues. How can we not possibly trust them after 10 to 20 years of research has gone into some of these insecticides? So I encourage you guys to share my presentations with everybody. That has the website address for the EPA. It also has our website address, and it also has some of the non-target information that I talked about at the end of my presentation as well.
Ari, because we really don't have enough time to really deal with all the things you wanted to present as well as all the questions here, how would you feel about maybe meeting with some people in a kind of a separate discussion, particularly people that are directly affected?
I think that's a wonderful idea, Dorothy. From day one, where I started getting inquiries from the public, I made our doors available. I have invited everybody to come and visit with us, to come and sit down with us, visit our facilities, meet with myself and my staff, feel confident about your professionals that are really at work with for you. Dorothy was kind enough to actually come with a couple of colleagues and visit us. We would love to do that for the rest of you as well. In the spring, we are actually planning an open house, primarily for the user groups out in the wetland habitats. This includes everybody from the Duck Club Duck Club members to the private landowners, the various environmental groups that are out there. But in addition to that, I welcome any of you to reach out to me and please come and visit us. I would love to be able to sit down with you and explain what we do and hopefully alleviate some of the concerns that you may have.
The other thing, Ari, could you also talk a little bit about your board is meeting tomorrow?
Our board is meeting on the 18th. We meet on the third Thursday of every month. Those meetings, just like all other public meetings, you can subscribe to our body on the public notice website. You will be sent a copy of the agenda. For any of you that like to attend our meeting, please send me an email. We are still continuing to meet electronically. We're hoping we can change that in the very near future, but our doors are open. The board meetings are also open as well. So I welcome every single one of you to come to our meetings as well.
Ari, thank you very much. We're going to take all of the questions here. We will put them in the minutes. We will send them to you so that you can respond to them. And we'll make sure that then the responses are posted on our website and are sent out to the people, so that you're responding to a whole group of things rather than every single person here. And then we'll follow up with the getting back with you. The board, in terms of a meeting, the board is going to have to respond by your March 31st deadline for comments on the environmental assessment. So if people have specific comments on environmental assessment or want to be part of the board's discussion about those comments, they should leave that comment in the chat, and we can also include their comments in that. And we will be getting back with you. And if anybody has not been to their offices, I mean, they are pretty fun. It's an amazing organization and amazing work, right there on 2200 West. And so you're part of the community.
Thank you, Dorothy. I appreciate that. And I think it's important for people to realize that we are members of your community. We live here, we work here. We love to enjoy the outdoors as much as you do. If there is anything that we can do to reduce our ecological footprint, we will certainly go out of our way to do that. But please bear in mind that I also rely on what's provided to me through the EPA. And we have to protect public health and we have to enhance your quality of life. And we have a mission, and it's not a fun spot to be in, to be quite honest with you, but we do our best with what we have. But I appreciate you guys having me, and I appreciate everybody being very cordial.
And we'll be talking with you again, and thank you so much. And you're welcome to stay, because you should fill out the survey having to do with the 600 and 700 North transportation study, mobility study. Kyle, you there?
I am. Hello.
Okay. Tell everybody why they ought to be responding to your study and your survey and what you've got.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Just give me one sec.
And I think let's Kyle talk instead of doing questions, so that he can get through everything here. And then if you have questions for Kyle afterwards, people can leave, and those who want to stay can stay. Unless you're poor Allison and she's kind of stuck. But I think we've got two people here. So Allison, if you have to leave, you can have your
We're good.
backup. Right.
We're good.
Okay.
Okay, well, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
This-
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. Then I can be brief. Thank you for your time this evening. So my name is Kyle Cook. I'm a transportation engineer with the Salt Lake City Division of Transportation. So I'm talking to you tonight about our corridor study that's going on 600 and 700 North. We're looking at the corridor all the way from end to end. So over near Second West in the Capitol Hill area, all the way to 2200 West. So that's a pretty long corridor, a lot of different things going on. And what we're trying to do is tee up a vision for what to do with that street as far as making investments in the pavement and things that are back of curb. We've got transit coming to that corridor. And so we're really trying to stitch together kind of a coherent plan. And obviously this is going to be of interest to a lot of communities that are both on the corridor or just use the corridor to come and go. One of the things that I just need to kind of start by saying is some of you will have heard of this project and understand that there's a lot of water under the bridge or history that got us to this point. We started the project about a year ago, and we actually had the opportunity to meet in person, some with folks on this call. That was right before COVID hit, and for as with it did with a lot of things, it kind of threw a wrench in what we'd hoped to do with respect to outreach and going to events that were already planned and talking to folks. We have done some successful engagement activities. We did a big survey in the summer. We did that collected feedback, just sort of open-ended feedback about what you like, what you hate about the corridor. We did a quick build project on 12th West and 6th North in November of last year. And I don't know, hopefully some of you were able to see that. We were kind of demonstrating ideas that we're talking about, like curb extensions and how those can make crosswalks easier to get across because it makes the crossing shorter, makes the pedestrians more visible, ways to integrate art into infrastructure. And it was a good sort of advertisement for the project. And so I guess I need to move it along here, but what I'm trying to say is we've been out on the corridor talking with folks and thinking about it for a while now. And this is the time frame of the study, the plan that precedes what was likely going to be several years of investment and improvements along the corridor. And in my opinion, these are long overdue. And so I'm excited to be part of the team that's going to be building projects in this area for years to come based on the work that we're doing now. So the big call to action right now is we've got a survey open. It's open till the end of the month. And we've got some content that I'm going to show you real quick. I'll just sort of do a quick show of my browser here. We've got a lot of content online. What we've done is we've distilled over 100 comments that we received from our survey in the summer. Let's see. Working with our stakeholder group that is composed of people that actually live within the neighborhood. So this is, your representatives either on the council or neighbors, and established 3 concepts. And each concept has tries to reflect what we've been talking about all along as far as solutions for speed management, ways to bridge the neighborhoods and make the corridor less of a divide on the north and south side of the communities. And so don't get too hung up on the small graphics. That's really just to show you that we have these ideas, and they have different cross-section elements. So different lane configurations. Where do we put the vehicles? Where do we put bike lanes and parking, for example? Different types of streetscape features that would be appropriate. So in one instance, we're thinking about where we are going to put bus stops. In another instance, we're thinking about maybe having some decorative medians installed that accommodate mid-block crossings. And we're kind of thinking about like, what's the context? This is a long corridor. There's certain contexts. The commercial nodes around Redwood Road and around 12th West and the Smiths there are kind of important centers that attract a lot of people on walking and on bikes, for example, and are kind of our vulnerable road users. The area around the Backman Elementary and the Jordan River Park is kind of also a focus area where we see a lot of opportunity to really just sort of leverage the cool things that are already going on there. So don't have a ton of time, but what I just want to say briefly is that what's shown on the screen is a series of goals that the project established, and some of these are, these are all good goals. Some of them have a little bit of tension between them in terms of what sort of modes we're prioritizing. Are we really focused on bicycles and pedestrians? Are we focused on transit users? Are we focused on, I think the reality and a lot of the things we've heard is that this is an important automobile corridor connecting interstate, Redwood Road, and is used as a commuter corridor for a lot of drivers from the area too. So that's important, and we're trying to balance all those needs. This last slide, I think, is I just want to kind of point out that, despite the challenges that COVID presented in terms of getting together and rolling out a scroll plot and putting sticky notes on a map, we had our kind of virtual version of that with our stakeholder committee. And again, representation from Westpointe, Fair Park, Rose Park, and so this was not done in a vacuum. So now we'll just go to the website, and I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough. Again, this is sort of a call to action for checking out the site, checking out the survey, and letting us know what you think. So SLC Gov Transportation 6 North will take you to our website where we've got a lot of content. If you were interested in following the breadcrumbs of how we got here, a lot of the content's on here. This is our story map, which is housing all of the content that's current, that we're excited to share, that we want you to respond to. And this is what's called a story map. So it's got content and in each tab that shows the different alternatives. My recommendation is to use this little pop-out button or open it in a new window, and that takes you to a new tab on your browser. And a story map this is just kind of a container to hold a lot of information. So here we've got a little bit of background, but let's talk a little bit about with these three alternatives. They kind of start from I guess a little bit less transformational to more transformational. And so in concept one, which we'll call our baseline with improvements, what we're looking at here is maintaining all the travel lanes, but doing it in a way that incorporates crosswalk enhancements. So those could be done with medium pedestrian refuge islands. That also is an opportunity for some landscaping. Provides pedestrians a place to kind of do a two-stage crossing, so they can kind of look for a gap and traffic one lane at a time, or one direction at a time, I should say. Bulb outs, and this is really just sort of a concept of what we call a plan view. So this could be extended along all or part of the corridor. We want to looking for opportunities to upgrade the cycling facilities, possibly with some buffering treatments that could be done with wider sections of paint or some different delineator posts, or even looking at doing a raised section here. And this alternative maintains on-street parking through most of it, which is important because we know there's a lot of residential uses that immediately front the corridor. We have new transit routes coming to the area. This is part of the city's transit master plan, and the UTA 5-year plan, which looks at implementing the frequent transit network. So if you haven't heard of that, that's just basically creating a gridded system of routes that run frequently, start early, end late, they run on weekends. It's this very intuitive system. And so we're excited to bring some new transit service to the west side on 6th North and 10th North. And before you ask, I'll just say the route is currently planned runs along Redwood Road and then ducks, goes to the east on 6th North and then on 10th North. So we don't actually have new routes running planned between 22nd West and Redwood. So it's just a point of clarification. But I'm confident those are going to be still really useful routes for a lot of folks in your area. And then, take some time and scroll through these. There's some nice animations that illustrate kind of 3D renderings. Those are kind of fun to look at. Some different streetscape ideas that we're thinking about, because we can't, a nice corridor plan is going to have a lot of little elements, and it's just really hard to convey all that detail within these plan views. So these character boards kind of describe some of the things we're thinking about for each option. This I-15 interchange has been noted as a big barrier for people, and a big barrier for the east side and west side connectivity, particularly for those walking and biking. And so that's an area that we've kind of focused on here, where we're looking at how can we do some simple interventions, starting from simple to more complex at this interchange. And some visuals about how that might look in and around the Backman Elementary and Riverside Park. So for each one of these options, we've got a kind of similarly scrolling layout. So there's some plan view examples. There's some visuals of how that might look. This is the Green Boulevard concept. And so this scenario looks at potentially reducing travel lanes along the corridor to accommodate more greening and median space. This could be done on all or parts, or specific segments. So, and the last one I want to mention, this is a pretty radical idea, but it's really pretty exciting. It's the idea of repurposing these really wide corridors that particularly we have in the Fair Park area into some civic space, where you might, in this example, we've got kind of this linear park concept, or we call it a street side park. And this could be really interesting around the school and Riverside Park node, where you've already got kind of a concentration of civic space, and this could extend that green ribbon east and west along the corridor. So this is not something that we'd look at doing for the entire reach of the street, but it's something that's worth exploring. And so what we're at a point right now where we've developed some ideas. We've got kind of a list of interventions along the corridor, and we're looking for feedback. So right now, we're up to we're over 300 comments, and this is great. We're getting a lot of feedback. We're making a really concerted push to do this in Spanish and English, and create more time for the survey to be open. And I'm coming to meetings like this to just get the word out, because it's really important that we set our trajectory right from the start. And that's really the opportunity that we're in right now. So that's what I came to say. I know we're close to time, but if there are questions, or I'm also available. I'll just put my contact back up here. And again, not the end of the conversation. This is just, again, we're trying to get feedback on the trajectory, but we expect projects to be implemented in phases over coming years. And so I'm sure I'll be back to talk to this group and periodically give you updates on what we're expecting to do and when.
So Kyle, do check the chat. I mean, I think Steve has made some extensive comments and would like to talk with you. So if you could follow up with him on that. See, I really want to encourage people. This is Kyle said that they've been working on it for the last year, but that's actually an understatement, because I remember 2 years ago us meeting at a focus group and talking about it, and it hadn't even started yet. I mean, you guys have been thinking about this for a lot longer than a year. And I'm not sure how long you've been thinking about it and planning it, but it's been a lot. It's been.
Yeah, that's true. And what else I'll say is that we are within our, we work closely with the engineering division and the transportation division to figure out where we're going to allocate resources, and try not to, I guess we'd like to focus on corridors, and rather than spreading it really thin and wide, we'd try to make sure that where we're spending time and effort, we really do it right. And 6th and becoming a real priority that I'm seeing for the city. And so that's good news, I think, for your community. Those changes will come in different, they'll be manifest in different ways, but suffice to say, I think having infrastructure investment in your community is a good thing, and it's something that you can look forward to.
Is there was one question from the chat that I feel like we might be able to answer somewhat quickly, but maybe not. Is there any discussion of light rail in that corridor?
Light rail, no.
Okay.
No, we're just, it's frequent bus service is what we're talking about.
Great, thank you.
Let's see, I'm just looking at a comment from Steve. Took 6 North as a cyclist, pretty avid cyclist, it sounds like, and saying, well, you're going to bump it out from the far right edge to the edge of the travel lane. Okay, so I think what we'd like, generally speaking, what we're looking to do is create as comfortable and inviting bicycle facilities as possible. And the profession's evolved a little bit. I mean, I think, used to be, well, you got a shoulder, you're good to go. You can ride on that. And, we've gone from painted bike lanes, and I think the industry has come to the point where we collectively think that in a lot of instances, providing protected bike facilities are going to be more effective for encouraging a larger population to actually ride. These would be, you know, more than just your assertive cyclists. And it sounds like Steve's got a lot of experience, you know, probably very comfortable riding with traffic. And we're trying to make sure folks like that are accommodated, but we're also trying to get at a higher cycling mode share by providing safe and comfortable facilities.
Can I speak for just a second?
Sure. Hi, Steve.
I mean, I felt like it had its own bike lane for most of the way. And I'm kind of concerned about at your intersections where you bump out the curb. Sometimes when cyclists have to move, I mean, when you're moving in a straight line, you have to go around traffic and move into traffic, out of traffic, into traffic. It throws the cars off. And if you don't make a straight line, and it looks like you have a straight line, but nevertheless, you're really close to the traffic at that point, where the way it's set up now is you've almost got a lane and a half of traffic in the right lane, and people have plenty of room to stay away from you now when you cycle there. And I worry about you getting rid of that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I hear what you're saying. This corridor is one that we want to maintain comfortable cycling lanes on. So, you know, that's a priority.
You used to have 2 traffic lanes on 9th West.
Right.
And then you made 1 bicycle lane and 1 traffic lane, and it's close to the traffic now. And people who drive have a tendency to drift where they're looking. And so what they'll do is see a bicyclist and they'll start looking at him and they'll start drifting towards him and catch themselves at the last second before they run off.
They got those little bright lights blinking. It sort of draws you in.
Yeah.
That's not what they're supposed to do.
Kyle, thank you very, very much for coming and for being patient with us and that.
Oh, I know. I learned a lot tonight. That was a good presentation by Ari. I'm glad you guys didn't grill me as hard as you did him. You're pretty knowledgeable on.
Well, our motto is we don't do boring, and
Yeah.
living in Westpointe is definitely not a boring neighborhood. When the survey, you said you're extending things. When do people have to?
In a month. We're keeping it up. It's been open. It'll be open for 6 months total. So we've done, email blasts. We've sent out postcards. It's going to stay up until the end of the month. Seems like that's enough time to get the word out. And so for folks on the call, please check it out. And also, let your neighbor know, or, there's not going to be, the word of mouth, it really helps extend the reach. So that's what I'd say. And we'll continue to kind of promote it where we can, but look for your help to help get the word out as well.
Kyle, thank you so very much. And with that, I want to thank everyone for coming. If the Mosquito Abatement Board, you can listen to their comments, and that's, like they said, on next week. Our board meeting is also next week. We do a monthly report. I've sent that out to our email list, and it has a lot of the details. If you didn't get the monthly report, put something in the chat and we'll make sure that you get it. And like I said, next month, the mayor will be coming. And so we're going to focus most of our time on that. So I have your questions for her. So Allison, anything that you want to add?
Nope, that's it. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks, y'all.
Allison, I'll give you a call, okay?